Hello and welcome to a New York City Netrunner March final between a Chaos Theory Haas-Bioroid deck and a Chaos Theory Haas-Bioroid deck. This will indeed be a mirror match. The tournament winning runner will be playing as Chaos Theory in this video. The tournament runner-up will be playing the Corp as Haas-Bioroid. This is game one of the final, and both decks will be using cards through Cyber Exodus as Study and Static has not yet been released. The Corp has drawn into his opening hand, and it's a pretty solid opening hand. Wall of Static, Enigma, Aggressive Secretary, and Melange. That's basically your ideal opening hand. Enough ice that you can res and protect both your HQ and your R&D. Now, this hand, he doesn't necessarily need to protect HQ, with Melange and Aggressive Secretary being the only trashable cards and no agendas. But if he wants to use those later, because of their low trash cost, he does indeed want to protect HQ. And it can also waste the runner's time. The runner, as his first action, chooses to run R&D, hits the Wall of Static. Interesting, basically means he either isn't worried about Neural Katana or doesn't think that the Corp runs it. That's always the fear of Neural Katana. If you have something good in your hand, you don't want to run first. Runs HQ as his second action, hits Enigma, losing an action, one action remaining. Wow, that's very interesting. If he had hit a Neural Katana, there was a good chance he lost Magnum Opus. So there was a bit of a daring move, but again, you're basically playing the odds whether or not the Corp is running the Katana. Corp draws into a Vitruvius. And let's see what he does with his hand. He's fairly well protected right now, as the only thing on the board is Magnum Opus for the Shaper. But the disadvantage of Magnum Opus is now you basically have to play twice as fast. The Chaos Theory deck, and really any Shaper deck, picks up a lot of tempo once Magnum Opus is in play. They still have to build their rig, but you have to play a little bit smarter, or at least keep up with their economy, which Melange can do. Passes it back to the runner, and let's see what the runner does here. He has Magnum Opus, and he is playing Haas-Bioroid, so Rototurret, it should be a fear, but apparently he's not worried about Rototurret. He runs the remote, does not res, sees the Melange. He didn't have the credits to trash it, so the Corp just let him through, meaning he just wasted an action. He then takes 2 credits, and let's see if he runs again. He still has to be worried about a Rototurret here, but again, the Corp has no credits, so probably part of the reason he's fearless in running. Reses a Wall of Static, doesn't have a Barrier Breaker, so he bounces off, and he draws a card. Passes it back to the Corp. See if the Corp does anything here. He can't res the Melange currently, so he may just take credits. He doesn't have a full hand, but he does have a couple trashable cards in hand. The Vitruvius Agenda, no Gordian Blade, so he doesn't have to worry about it all that much. And he draws into a second Adonis campaign. That's a lot of credits. That'll be good for keeping up with Magnum Opus. He still has to draw some ice here, because he doesn't really have any in hand. Installs the Adonis campaign, gaining a credit. And I guess the last two, takes 2 credits as the last 2 actions, passes it back to the runner. So the runner has 2 barriers and a Gordian Blade and an unresed card on the far left of the Corp's play area. Installs a Snowball, which is a barrier breaker. Now he can easily get the Melange, and generally destroying Melange is a good idea. He may not have enough credits for it, but yes he does. Spends 2 credits, 3 credits to break the Wall of Static, and then 1 to trash the Melange. Pretty good. Even trashing an unres Melange is a good thing. You don't want the Corp getting money from it. Passes it back to the Corp. Corp draws into a beta test. Ugh, his hand is getting kind of rough right now. No Gordian Blade, he doesn't have to worry as much, but if a Gordian Blade were to hit the table soon, he could be in trouble. If I were the runner here, I might very well just save up the Gordian Blade in my hand, take some credits, and then just try and pop it in for a turn and run on his hand. Don't know what's in there, but could be worth the credits to find out. You also have to deal with the unres cards, though, so it's a bit of a gamble to do that. Passes it back to the Corp, or sorry, to the runner. The runner takes credits and runs the unresed card, seeing Adonis campaign after breaking the Wall of Static and trashing the Adonis campaign. Usually a good move to not waste credits. So in this case, if someone cost him 3 credits, it was most likely worth the extra 3 credits to not have to go in there again after the Corp resed it. Corp draws into a Wall of Static. Surprised he's not resing the Adonis campaign here. So he's playing a little bit of a bluff tactics that is not, in fact, an Adonis campaign. He at least wants the runner to run on it. Installs what looked like a second wall of static in front of the current wall of static for 1 credit, and he gets 1 back for Haas-Bioroid's ability. Now, his hand here is pretty rough. The runner doesn't have a Gordian Blade, so stuff is safe. Installs an aggressive secretary and advances it. But yeah, his hand is pretty safe from the runner, so it's not surprising to see him keep his agendas in hand. Runner takes 8 credits and then passes it back to the Corp. Let's see what Corp draws into. Oh my goodness, that's a lot of agendas. I mean, they're still safe in his hand, but if the runner gets a Gordian Blade, he's in trouble. Advances the aggressive secretary twice, and then installs an agenda. So he's playing, right now he's playing a bit of a shell game with his agenda and his Adonis campaign. He didn't res the Adonis campaign, which means that the runner might not be worried about that second unresed card, and we know it's an agenda, but the runner doesn't. That's why it's often good to run unresed things, even snares, unless you have something you want to play in your hand, because it forces the Corp to spend money, and you don't let this happen. You don't let an agenda get scored unprotected. So the runner installed a personal workshop, drew some cards and took some credits, passes it back to the Corp. You have to assume the Corp's just going to score that Vitruvius. He's got the credits for it. There's really no need not to, except that he wouldn't have enough to trigger aggressive secretary. So that might be a consideration here, but it's dangerous to let an agenda sit there. It is much more dangerous now because it has the 2 advancement tokens. It could be an aggressive secretary, and he can't lose the magnum opus and the snowball. So having the 2 credits does put the runner in a bind. He installed another, well, it looked like another agenda. I missed it, but it would be interesting if that was another agenda. He's playing very much a shell game over there, and the runner isn't calling his bluff. Runner runs on the Adonis campaign, ironically. Let's see if he trashes it. At this point, it's so cheap to get in there that it's not worth trashing it, which he doesn't. Let's see if he goes after the other 2 cards. No, it looks like he's assuming that other unres card is just another Adonis campaign. Drops a Dinosaurus onto the test workshop, the personal workshop. And one of the things that happened a lot during this game was there was a lot of back and forth banter. It was kind of interesting. Not sure if the runner was trying to see how the Corp was reacting, but there was a lot of table time spent just talking back and forth. So here you can see him considering running the double advanced card. That is not a good choice at this point because it could be an aggressive secretary. I'm surprised he doesn't run the other unadvanced card. He runs R&D, breaks the wall of static, and scores an agenda. An accelerated beta test, no less. That's just a rough opener for the Corp here. That's a lot of agendas in that first 10, 15 cards. You should expect like 2 or 3 agendas, and he wound up with, what, 5? That's pretty rough. So here he advances a Vitruvius twice, getting it 1 token. It's always good to have a token on Vitruvius, that way you can save some stuff from the archives if need be. And that was not his whole turn. He still has 1 action remaining. I would assume he's going to install a card. No, he just takes a credit here. Runner looks like he's considering running R&D again. It's not particularly expensive. Instead, he takes 8 credits, it looks like, and passes it back to the Corp. Corp takes 3 credits, passes it back to the runner. Oh, sorry, no, that was the end of the Corp's turn. I apologize. So now it's actually the runner's turn. Runner's first action is to draw into a stim hack. Takes a tick off of the Dinosaurus on the personal workshop. 3 actions remaining. Second action draws into a vamp. 2 actions remaining here. So he has 3 stim hacks, a notoriety, a very interesting hand. He needs a Gordian Blade or a Zoo here, and he just is not able to draw into one. He could burn the stim hack to push the Dinosaurus into play, but there's not necessarily any benefit. I know if I were him, I would just be dropping stuff on the personal workshop or drawing. The stim hacks are nice, but he needs that Gordian Blade badly. He has to... There's a lot of unres ice, so it's not necessarily a bad thing, but if he doesn't know what unres cards. He doesn't know what that 1 unres dice is. Corp installs looked like either an Adonis or a trap, and installs an unres melange and takes a credit. He has about 4 credits now. Passes it back to the runner. The runner runs the unresed Adonis. Looks like he wants to trash it. It's not a bad move now. It'll keep the Corp poor, though he obviously installed a melange that he's going to be able to res next turn if it doesn't get run on. It's very interesting. With all those face-down cards, I'm always tempted to run them, but he doesn't want... Ooh, an infiltration. That is very nice in this situation. He can... It's not really worth it to infiltrate the face-down card. It could be a beta test, and he could be waiting for a precog, but at this point, if he hasn't scored it, odds are it is not an agenda. Draws a card and drops a Femme Fatale onto Personal Workshop. He has to discard here, and I believe he discards a Stim Hack. Passes it to the Corp. The Corp, yep, there is a second agenda, a beta test. We'll see if he activates it. So the Corp has been playing really aggressive, and it's worked out for him. Not always a good move, but in this case, the runner just didn't call his bluff. Corp sees an Ichi, an Ice Wall, and a Trick of Light on his beta test. Pretty good. I don't know where I would put those cards. You're playing against Shaper, so putting the Ice Wall in front of another barrier is actually a bad thing because it effectively does nothing. He pays 1 to break the snowball, and it's as if he just pumped the snowball by 1 for getting after the wall static. So in this case, it would probably be best to put it on HQ where he doesn't have an Ice Wall yet. Or if he planned to advance the Ice Wall, it would also be a good thing. The Ichi would probably be better served on a remote HQ than R&D right now, as most of his agendas, he's gotten a lot of agendas into play, so odds are his next few cards aren't going to be agendas, but it may very well be good on R&D because he feels he can score his agendas and the runner can't get to them, and he doesn't want the runner to get to anything in R&D. Now you'll also see the runner here was going to discard and infiltrate, if you see all the card play happening up in the top left corner, and instead chose to discard a Stim Hack. This is a tournament, so that really is something that the Corp has to allow, but in this case the Corp chose to allow it. So this is where the table talk again starts to come into play. He's still trying to decide where to put that ice. It wouldn't be bad to put the Ice Wall on one of the remotes, but that Ichi has to go on either one of his centrals or his remote. The Ice Wall could be good on Archives too. Wow, I'm surprised he installed the Ichi over there. We know that's the Melange, so that's actually not a bad move. It'll make it more expensive for him to trash the Melange, and he can use that server later. But at the same time, it doesn't really grant him a bunch. He really thinks he's... Oh, well, he has Trick of Light. So actually, I will say this. Protecting that aggressive secretary is not the biggest thing, because if he hits it, he blows up programs. And now the aggressive secretary is actually going to be used for Trick of Light later in the game. So the Ichi on the remote is actually a good move if you can get another ice in front of it. The runner infiltrates the aggressive secretary. Not necessarily a waste, but a bit unfortunate. Aggressive secretary right now is probably the best trap in the game. It doesn't do anything early game, but as soon as the runner has one program installed, it's devastating. You know, you just have to keep 2 credits, and they can't run it because they can't. Oh wow, a priority requisition. The runner is getting really lucky on his top decks on those R&D runs. That's a lot. That's just a ton of agendas in the first. He has had more agendas than really the Corp should. That's bad luck. That's just bad luck on the Corp's part. He's been lucky in scoring the ones in hand because of the lack of aggression on the runner's part, but you really have a tough time winning when they're just top decking priority requisition and Accelerate Beta Test. Those are pretty key cards for HP. So here, still no Gordian Blade on the runner's side. He does have a Femme Fatale, so if he hits a card that he needs to go through, he can just pay for it off the workshop. So there's not as much of a need for a Code Gate Breaker right now, like Zoo or Gordian Blade, but at the same time, you don't really want to waste your Femme Fatale on something that you could break with a traditional breaker. So now the question is, what is behind that Ichi? He's already been willing to aggressively score, aggressively install and score agendas. So there is a good chance there is an agenda from the runner's perspective behind that Ichi. We know it's a melange. We know he'll be able to trash it if he runs it, but he does not know that, and he doesn't have the actions necessary to go through the Ichi right now. So there is obviously some fear on his part that it is something that he does not want to let the corporation have. Still no code gate breaker. Not drawing for the code gate breaker. You can see he decided to stim hack run the Ichi. That is most likely so he can install the femme fatale for cheap. In this case, he doesn't need to install a dinosaur, so he effectively can install the femme fatale for free and use the remaining credits to bypass, which is what he is doing. He has one credit, looks like one credit on the stim hack, pushes the femme fatale into play from the personal workshop, uses the remaining 3 credits to bypass the Ichi. He has 2 credits remaining, sees the melange, and can pay 1 credit to trash it, which he does. That's 2 melanges down, so the Corp really has had poor economy this game. He's had a lot of cheap ice to make up for it, which is very good, but it's somewhat shocking to see an HB deck have almost no economy. He has had to use most of his economy to score out agendas, so that could be a part of why he has little economy. The runner takes 1 brain damage, losing his 3rd stim hack. So it's a good card no matter what. A little bit better with personal workshop, but it's not like it's a critical card. It does carry a lot of surprise though. Stim hack is a very powerful card. I know I always hate seeing it come out of the runner's hand. You think you have a safe server, and then bang, it just gets blown wide open. So, the Corp here draws into, let's see, he doesn't have many credits, again, draws into a roto turret. Wow, that's almost useless right now. It'll cost the runner a couple credits to get through, but that's it. He has the femme fatale. Haven't seen a corporate troubleshooter. He doesn't even have the credits to use a corporate troubleshooter. And you have to imagine that at this point, we haven't seen any test run for the runner. He's going to get a test run or a Gordian Blade or something he needs soon. So the roto turret isn't going to do a ton right now. He also doesn't have a ton of credits. If he reses the roto turret, he's going to have almost 0 credits. He can install and take 2 credits, bring it out to 5, but then he reses the roto turret and goes down to 1. He has to be able to trigger the aggressive secretary, or else the runner is just going to run it and blow up the advancement tokens for his Trick of Light. Now, the runner doesn't know right now that he has the Trick of Light, so he may not necessarily do so. But I guess a takeaway here is if someone's willing to let a trap sit, especially in a remote server that is relatively secure, you probably need to run it because you almost have to assume they have Trick of Light. It's just very dangerous not to. The runner runs R&D, doesn't score another agenda, sees an archive memory. So now we know there are 2 methods by which the Corp can get a card out of archives. 3rd action, draws into Gordian Blade, and looks like he takes 2 credits as his final action. Corp draws into the archive memories. Might be good here to go back and get a melange. I don't think he has any face down, so he can't necessarily keep secret what he gets back. He installs a Vitruvius. Again, there's been a lot of table talk, so he installs it way out to the left. Installs a Vitruvius, gaining a credit. Surprised he didn't put it behind the Ichi, but again, he's been playing a lot of bluff here, and it has been paying off for him. The runner just simply has not been aggressive. There we go. So he advances it, and again, you always have to be afraid of aggressive secretary. His final action uses the archive memories. I did not see what he returned to his hand. Uses a Trick of Light and scores out. Sorry, he may not have used the archive memories. Uses the Trick of Light to move 2 counters from the aggressive secretary to the Vitruvius he just installed. So he is at 6 points to the runner's 5. You bet it is. Let's see what the runner does here. Another tick off of his Dinosaurus. He has a Gordian Blade. He has the MU to install the Gordian Blade. So the question here is it worth running on the HQ's hand, on the Corp's hand, to see if they have any agendas in there? He's not necessarily in a bad position. It's not like the Corp... Actually, I take that back. He is in a relatively bad position because there is one counter on one of those Vitruvius. So if the Corp advances the aggressive secretary and then installs another agenda on a subsequent turn, he can win the game in one turn without the runner really having an opportunity to do anything. So that token on Vitruvius, if it still remains, is pretty huge. He also has the archive memories, so in the event that he doesn't have a token on Vitruvius, he can just simply archive memories the Trick of Light. Fast advance is very dangerous now. You know, the running R&D is very critical against fast advance decks. R&D and HQ to score out agendas before the Corp can score them. Draws into a second archive memories. Not a ton of help, but definitely going to be good. He could actually use both of them. Get the Trick of Light, get the Melange, install the Melange behind Ichi, and he'd wind up a credit better. Already has the advancement token on the aggressive secretary, so at that point he'd just be getting credits and waiting to score an agenda. Installs an Ice on R&D. Obviously good, as he has no agendas in hand, so if he's going to win the game, it's going to come off of the top of his deck. He cannot let the runner score an agenda before he can draw it. So runner's in somewhat of a bind here. He doesn't have to worry about Rototurret, but he does have to run on his first action because there haven't been any really res Ichis in this game. I can't count the corpse credits, but he has all of his breakers, but there's nowhere good for him to run right now. He knows that's an aggressive secretary. He doesn't want to lose programs just to prevent the Trick of Light, though it may not be the worst decision here, ironically. It could be that, and as I build decks, I will definitely be considering whether or not Sacrificial Construct is worth running now, with Trick of Light being so powerful. Runner runs a Vamp here. Corp has only 3 credits, so that is going to be a nice, cheap Vamp for him, except that he has to push the Gordian Blade into play. So here you can see he actually is going to push the Dinosaurus into play and then install the Gordian Blade on it. I'm not sure why he's doing that. He has the MU to just install the Gordian Blade straight up and save the Dinosaurus for something, but interesting play. Strength 4 Gordian Blade we know will help him because we know the Corp has a toll booth, but I'm not sure that he knows that. I don't believe they played at all today, as there were pretty much the ideal number of players that the top 2 would never have to play each other. So this is a bit of an interesting play. Wasted some credits just to get the Dinosaurus into play. Does give him some flexibility on his programs, though. So if he draws into, say, a medium or an imp or something, he can still install it. So that, it wasn't a bad play. It was just a very interesting play. See what the Corp does. See what he draws into. Draws into another Ice Wall. Ugh. I mean, those will be helpful on remotes and somewhere he doesn't already have an Ice Wall installed, but it's kind of a very interesting use for Snowball is that it just an Ice Wall doesn't really stop it if there's another barrier behind it. The Ice Wall is almost meaningless without advancement tokens. So the Corp takes 3 credits and passes it back to the runner. Runner doesn't have a ton of credits here, but neither does the Corp. You can see that the runner's card in hand is a Notoriety. He's running incredibly low on cards and hasn't really seen any influence aside from Trick of Light, so he doesn't know what tricks the Corp might have. So it's a little dangerous to get down to 1 card, but it's not terrible because usually you don't see a Scorched Earth out of Haas-Bioroid. Uses a Diesel on his second action as he drew a card. Draws into a Plascrete and a Magnum Opus. He's just showing the Corp the cards he drew into and how useless they are, or theoretically useless they are. The Dupe Magnum Opus actually isn't that bad right now, and he shouldn't have shown that because if he ran the aggressive secretary, it was very likely that the Corp would have destroyed the Magnum Opus. So showing him that may not have been a good idea, but they are somewhat dead cards if he chooses not to run the aggressive secretary. Also having the test run, he really could have gotten back whatever the Corp destroyed. So there's been a lot of interesting things that happened at this table during this game with regards to the table talk, and I wish I could get the audio to mix well with the commentary, but it just really doesn't. So, see what the Corp does with it, or sorry, see what the runner does with his final action. He chooses to run R&D. See if the Corp reses that Ice. I don't know that he has the credits for it. lets him access seize a biotic labor. So this is the HB build that I am most scared of. Pure fast advance HB. You just have everything. You have 3 Trick of Lights, 3 Biotic Labors, and 3 Archive Memories to go and get them back. I'm a little surprised he doesn't have June Bugs, but the Ice Walls kind of cover what the June Bug would do. You advance the Ice Wall instead of advancing traps, and then you just Trick of Light off of them. So you can almost score any agenda. Even if you draw a Priority Wreck, you can have a Biotic Labor, and then use, so you have your 4 actions. One of them is a Trick of Light, and you can score an installed Priority Wreck. It's a very scary build. This is the one I am definitely most afraid of. Costs a lot of credits though, and as you can see, the Corp has not had a lot of credits this game. It's probably why so much of his ice is cheap and you haven't really seen any actual Bioroid ice. Fast Advance is not cheap. So he finally installs a card in front of, I believe that's one final Adonis Campaign or an Aggressive Secretary. It's the Ice Wall, which is probably his best move here because he gets the credit for it. Installs another card in front of HQ. Interesting. He doesn't have anything valuable in HQ, so it's not necessarily worth the credit. But at the same time, he probably doesn't... Whoa, 2 Biotic Labors. He really needs some credits fast. Passes it back to the runner. Runner is noting that he didn't run the Aggressive Secretary when the Corp had no money. That would have been a good move. You can also see here that the runner has a tag, so he can't really use his personal workshop safely. But the Corp doesn't have any tag punishment, so the tag is almost meaningless. I question if it's valuable to have at least 1 or 2 tag punishment cards like Closed Accounts now that Vamp and Account Siphon are so prevalent in the meta. So I think the runner is debating what that face down card is right here. If it's an agenda, Corp wins the game, but the Corp hasn't tried to res it, so likely it isn't an agenda and not worth running. It could be a high-cost agenda, and a Trick of Light here could win him the game as well, but at the same time he would have done it last turn, so again, odds are that it's not an agenda and it's not worth running. We know there's nothing in Archives because, as you can see, all the cards are face-up. They're kind of haphazard, which I'm a little surprised by. One of the things I noticed about this Corp is that he would put his face-down cards face-down and on top of and oriented in the same direction as the Archives. So I'm not sure if that's intentional or not to make it harder to see what's in Archives, but definitely I would have asked him personally to put the face-down cards sideways. So a lot of debating going here by the runner. His best choice continues to be to run R&D. There is a chance that Corp has an agenda in his hand, but it's going to be more consistent and productive to run R&D because if he didn't already draw the agenda, he has to go through you to draw the agenda. Or waste clicks to draw an agenda. And I personally would take the 50-50 of running and letting him draw cards to see if he gets the agenda. He can draw two additional cards, 3 for the turn. But if he's doing that, it's going to be even harder for him to score cards. So I am usually comfortable running R&D and letting the Corp win if they can win. Here he runs HQ. No res, angrily sees a Roto Turret. He still has Notoriety in his hand, and one thing I don't think he realized is that this is tournament play. If he scores that Notoriety, that's one more point that no matter what, if he loses this match, that's one more point the Corp would have to score in his next match to be able to actually beat him for the match. So him not scoring that Notoriety is pretty significant, and you'll actually see in the next game, it could have lost him the overall match, just based on the way he played the next game. 6 points, not winning the game, but scoring a point is nothing to scoff at. It's a critical thing in match play. Just the way that it all scores out, the more points you score, the more likely you are to win the match, even if you don't win a single game. 5 points is usually enough to win a single game or to win the match as the runner, but 6 points is much safer. Every point you score is A, closer to winning the game, and B, closer to winning the match. So the runner or the corp here has a bunch of effectively useless cards. 2 biotic labors, a trick of light, an archive memories, a hedge fund, and a bunch of ice. He doesn't have the credits to install any ice on R&D, and even if he did, that means he wouldn't be able to score out an agenda he drew. So he is drawing a bunch of cards that the runner couldn't have scored, and he could have just taken credits. Obviously, he didn't know that, and he wanted the agenda to just score it, but, you know, that's a disadvantage of drawing cards. There was almost no productivity, in theory, from him drawing those cards. He could have just taken credits and let himself slow draw. And the odds the runner would have scored an agenda would remain the same, really, because nobody knew what those cards were. So it's very interesting. Now it actually increases the probability that the runner will top deck an agenda. Runner sees a melange. Runner trashes melange. At this point, I don't know that trashing that melange was his best move. The corp obviously has no agenda in hand. So he was able to run it the second time, so it was in fact a good move. Had he not been able to run it the second time to confirm that the corp wouldn't be able to draw an agenda, it would not have been as strong to trash the melange. You want to give the corp dead cards when you dominate their R&D. Now, whether or not melange is actually a dead card is questionable, but it isn't an agenda. You could run the R&D and score an agenda next turn. So it forces them to draw more than just the mandatory draw when you already know what's on top, because you know it was an agenda. Corp draws into that roto turret. Again, effectively useless card at this point. He can't waste his credits on protecting anything. And he also has a hedge fund, which is nice. He could take a credit, pop the hedge fund, and then install an ice somewhere, because he'd finally have the credits to res it and feel safer. He still has the advantage in this game that he is dictating whether or not he's going to win. He just has to draw an agenda to win the game, in effect. So here, he installs a card, costs a credit, gets the credit back. Then I assume he's going to play the hedge fund here. He just has to take a credit and play the hedge fund. Though he may want to save the 5 cards in hand, you know, less odds that if the runner runs HQ, he's going to score anything. Not that there's anything to score in there to begin with. And there he goes, takes a credit, pops a hedge fund, which will pay for that toll booth that he put on R&D. The runner has been running R&D enough that that is a very good move. It's unfortunate for the runner as well, because now there's not no way for him to score notoriety, but a very minimal way for him to score notoriety. I can't say I'm totally surprised by him not scoring the notoriety, because there are no 1-point agendas out of HB, so if he scored an agenda, he'd win the game. But the match points, those matter, and notoriety matters. So here, he's still in that position. Running R&D is still his best move. He needs credits. He has to be afraid of only really Rototurret, Ichi, and Giannis. He already has a brain damage, but Giannis isn't very scary right now. If he runs on his first click, he's going to have credits to break anything small and ticks to break through a Giannis. He just takes credits, passes back to the Corp. Corp plays another hedge fund that he looks like he just drew into. I have to imagine he's going to either take credits here. I would just take credits here, but he may decide to draw. He doesn't have a full hand. But he can res the toll booth, so he doesn't really need to draw. He does draw. Draws into Enigma, another relatively useless card at this point. So he's just increasing the odds that the runner's going to get agendas at this point. Somewhat of an irony. Runner now has to decide what to do here. He could run HQ. We know that the Corp has no agendas, but he's been drawing enough. Whoa! I'm a little surprised by the test run. He's going to test run a medium in this case. Not a bad choice. Unfortunate that he didn't run the R&D to find that toll booth, because the medium is actually going to be useless here. And in the future as well, because that toll booth is just going to shut him out of R&D. He won't have the credits to run it every turn. And he already has an installed Femme Fatale. So here he test runs a medium, runs R&D, and you have to assume that the Corp is going to res the toll booth. And bang, he reses the toll booth. So there's 3 credits down. costs the runner an additional, only 2 because he has Gordian Blade, so it's only going to be 5 every time he wants to run the R&D. You can see the corp pointed to the test run on the medium. In this case, the runner uses the test run as a reminder that he has to put the medium back on top of the deck. So he pays the 3, pays the 2 from Gordian Blade, 1 up to 5 because it's on Dinosaurus, 1 to break, and then 1, 2, 3 from the Snowball. It's going to cost him 8 to break, so he can run R&D currently every other turn. If the medium had stayed in play, that'd be a good thing. But because the medium is not staying in play, it's actually going to take him 6 turns total for him to get to C2 cards, and that's just... It was a waste, unfortunately. He had no idea, but it was a waste. The corp had to res the toll booth no matter what the runner did unless he wanted to continue to draw cards. So had the runner just run R&D, the corp could have either not res the toll booth and use his draw to reduce the odds of the runner getting an agenda, or res the toll booth and just accept. Oh my goodness, another biotic labor. This is what happens when all your agendas come early in the game. You can't draw into them later because they're just not in the deck. Had a really weird draw. All agendas at the beginning, and then the rest of agendas appear to be on the bottom of the deck. So he draws into the biotic labor. Another useless card. I know I personally would... I'd probably install one of those useless ice because it's the same as gaining a credit. And you can at least get a server out of it. And then take a couple credits if I were him. Now the disadvantages, and the reason he's probably drawing, is that the runner still is able to dictate what he draws, just at a slower pace. It's going to cost the runner 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to break into R&D. So he could break into R&D every other turn. I'm not sure drawing was the right decision there. He could break into R&D next turn, so it probably was, but you never know. And every time he draws, he's losing credit. If you look at the number of cards he's drawn this game, he's probably lost 10 credits in opportunity cost to drawing, at least, if not more. So that is one of the disadvantages of drawing. Draws another card, again, another ice. That is the disadvantage of drawing. He reduces the odds when the runner runs. That he removes the ability for the runner to dictate as much, because now there's only a 25% chance that the runner is going to score an agenda in the next few cards he draws. But still, that's a lot of credits that he's missing out on here. And he just, again, every draw he makes, he increases the odds that the next card is an agenda for the runner if he doesn't draw the agenda. So it's not working against him, but it certainly not worked for him in this game. Could have worked for him if he drew an agenda. He just hasn't. He hasn't had the credits for a long time either. So it's been an unfortunate draw for the corp. Corp res is an ice wall. Good place for the ice wall. Costs 1 credit for the runner to break. He breaks in with the 1 on the ice wall and the credits for Enigma. Sees another ice wall. That's a lot of ice walls. I mean, the ice walls work very well in this strategy because the whole trick of biotic labor, it's a fast advanced deck. So ice wall's a great card in this deck. Runner runs archives. Oh, if only he had enough to run R&D, he could score that notoriety. There's nothing in the archives. We know that. He doesn't. But you can see all the stuff he's discarded. 3 biotic labors, a few rototards, a chimera. It's been rough. It's been very rough. It's nice to see 2 archive memories down there, because that means there's only 1 left in the deck. He could still get back a biotic, but he won't necessarily get 1 back. So we'll see what the runner does here to close his turn. I would assume just either take credits or draw cards. He really needs to take credits to keep up his ability to run. He really needs to... He has to be able to run R&D. We know that he can score... Sorry, the corp can score any agenda he draws at this point if it's not a priority requisition. So he's in a very good position. Just seeing the trick of light. So there's a lot of credits down the drain just to see nothing in hand. Not a good move at this point, because if the corp could have won the game, he would have already won the game. Corp draws into that final archive memories. The trick of light is enough to win him the game, most likely, because there's a priority rec scored, so there might be one left in the deck, and the rest would be 2-point agendas. Could be security forces or mandatory upgrades. Not sure which he would be playing, and I don't have a deck list for him, unfortunately. So again, still best move is either to install an ice on R&D so that he protects his draw, or take credit. So he finally draws into an agenda. Now he has to sit on the agenda for a turn. I wonder if he'll take credits or install an ice here. He can get down to 2 credits, but he won't have enough to res anything, so it's not good for him to install an ice on any server. If he just took a couple credits here, he would be all set. Installing the aggressive secretary is a good decision. It's a good bluff. Very good play. He gains the credit from it. Very good play there. If he doesn't win next turn, I would be shocked. Now here, ironically, all the running on HQ the runner has done reduces his ability, or he thinks now that the odds are no agendas in HQ. Or at least I would. It's an irony. We have seen how the Corp has played. He has drawn a ton of cards, and he didn't change his playstyle at all until he drew that agenda. He drew, gets the agenda, and first time in maybe 2 or 3 turns, he's installed anything that wasn't an ice. It's a bad tell, but at this point, there's really nothing that the runner can do except get lucky on HQ runs. I personally would try to get lucky on the HQ run, because the odds that that's an agenda are very low. But you have to run it, just to... Okay, you don't have to run it, because the odds he would have put it there, and it be an agenda, are almost 0. He can score the agenda out of hand, so that's all he has to do right here. Install, gaining credit, trick of light, advance, and that's game. But again, I think I personally would have run the HQ just to take the odds that he scores it out. So there you have it. Court played an excellent game considering the way his cards came up. May have been a little inefficient play on all of those draws because he could have had a lot more credits and just sat on a lot of those cards without fear. The runner never got the medium into play, so very interesting game, but very well played by the Corp. So that wraps up game 1. Runner has 5 points, and the Corp has 7 points. For match points, it is currently 10-5, and that means that the the Chaos Theory player has to win this next match and prevent the runner from scoring more than 5 points to either win the match or to tie. In the event of a tie, they would go to a third game. All right, and I hope you join me for game 2.